The last customer had left hours ago, but the scent of garlic and rosemary still lingered in the small dining room of Bella Cucina. I wiped down the worn wooden tables one last time, each scratch and dent holding memories of the past year's struggle. Tomorrow would be my restaurant's final service, or so my parents thought. My name is Sophia Martinez, and at 32, I was about to prove that sometimes the best revenge comes with a side of perfect timing and a dash of family secrets. Still here, moping over your failure. My mother's voice cut through the quiet evening air. She stood in the doorway with my father, both dressed in expensive clothes that screamed successful restaurateurs. Their chain of high-end steakhouses had made them millions, but it had cost them something more valuable, their soul. "We're here to make one final offer," Dad said, pulling out his checkbook. $50,000 to cover your debts. Then you can come work for us like you should have done from the start. I continued wiping tables, hiding my smile. If they only knew what Grandpa Giuseppe had told me during our last private dinner 3 months ago. The health inspector's report was quite clear, Mom continued, running a manicured finger along a table edge. This place is barely up to code. It's embarrassing to the family name. What they didn't know was that the failing health inspection had been staged, part of Grandpa's master plan. Just like the rumors of financial trouble, the canceled reservations, all carefully orchestrated to create the perfect moment. "At least say something, Sophia," Dad demanded. "We're trying to help you." I straightened up, facing them. "Would you like some coffee? Grandpa's special blend." Mom rolled her eyes. "Still serving that old man's coffee. No wonder this place is failing. Modern restaurants need modern ideas." "You're right," I said, heading to the kitchen. "Modern ideas like your frozen steaks and microwave sauces. Our restaurants make money," Dad snapped. "Which is more than I can say for this hobby of yours." I emerged with Grandpa's hand-hammered copper coffee pot and 3 cups. The same pot he used for 40 years in his original restaurant, the one they convinced him to sell to them 15 years ago. The one they turned into their first soulless steakhouse. "Remember this pot?" I asked, pouring the rich, dark liquid. Grandpa used to say the secret to great coffee isn't in the beans, it's in the memories the pot holds. "Sentimental nonsense," Mom muttered, but she took a cup anyway. They both did. They never could resist Grandpa's coffee. "Speaking of Grandpa," Dad said between sips, the estate lawyer called. "We're reading tomorrow at 10 a.m. Though I don't know why you're included, you chose your path when you opened this place instead of joining the family business." I watched them drink their coffee, remembering Grandpa's words. "Timing, piccola, is everything in business and in revenge. Let them think they've won, then serve them the perfect dish cold." "You know," Mom said, setting down her empty cup, "your grandfather was disappointed in you. All those summers you spent in his kitchen, learning his outdated recipes instead of modern restaurant management. Such a waste." The lie stung, but I held my peace. Tomorrow they would learn just how wrong they were about Grandpa's feelings. "The offer stands until tomorrow morning," Dad said, standing. "After that, you're on your own when the bank forecloses." They left, the bell over the door chiming one last time. I waited until their expensive car pulled away before going to the hidden safe in the kitchen. Inside was a thick envelope, Grandpa's last gift to me, along with a letter I'd memorized. "My dearest Sophia, by the time you read this, everything will be in place. Your parents think they understand business, but they never learned the most important ingredient in any restaurant, heart. They took my first restaurant and turned it into something cold and profitable. They won't do the same to you. I've watched you this past year, building Bella Cucina with the same love and dedication I once had. The long hours, the attention to detail, the way you treat every customer like family. You are my true heir in every way that matters. The papers in this envelope will show you what we've done together these past months. The staged health inspection, the artificial debt, all to make them think you failed. Meanwhile, every canceled reservation has been quietly rebooked under different names for next month's grand reopening. But first, we serve them the coldest dish of all, truth. With all my love, Nonno Giuseppe." I opened the envelope, reviewing the documents one last time. Property deeds, bank statements, contracts, everything needed to show that sometimes the best revenge doesn't need to be bitter. Sometimes it can taste like the perfect cup of coffee, served at exactly the right moment. Moving to the kitchen, I began prep for tomorrow's final service. Every dish would be perfect, every sauce made from scratch, every detail attended to, just as Grandpa had taught me. The marinade for the ossobuco needed to sit overnight, and the fresh pasta had to be rolled by hand. As I worked, I thought about the past year. The struggling restaurant that was actually turning a profit, the canceled reservations that were really just moved to a secret book, the health code violations that were all minor and already fixed. Every piece of the puzzle laid out exactly as Grandpa had planned before his passing. My phone buzzed. A message from Marco, Grandpa's old supplier. Everything ready for tomorrow, just like Giuseppe arranged. They won't know what hit them. I smiled, kneading the pasta dough with the same rhythm Grandpa had taught me years ago. In the corner, his copper coffee pot gleamed, holding decades of secrets and tomorrow's perfect revenge. The night passed in a blur of preparation. By dawn, the kitchen was filled with the aromas of slow-cooked sauces and freshly baked bread. I changed into my chef's whites, pressed and perfect, and waited for the morning's guests to arrive. My parents would be here first, eager to gloat over my final service before heading to the will reading. They didn't know that every table was actually reserved, every seat filled with people who'd been part of Grandpa's life and part of his plan. The morning sun streamed through the windows, catching the copper coffee pot and making it glow like a beacon. In a few hours, everything would change. But for now, I had sauce to stir and bread to bake, and the comforting knowledge that sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold at all. Sometimes it's served at exactly 180 degrees with a perfect crema on top and a cup warmed by generations of love and just a touch of justified vengeance. The morning service began exactly as Grandpa had choreographed. By 8 a.m., every table in Bella Cucina was filled with familiar faces, old customers from Grandpa's original restaurant, suppliers who'd known him for decades, chefs he'd mentored over the years. All here for what my parents thought was my restaurant's final day. My mother and father arrived at 8:30, dressed for the will reading in designer suits that looked out of place among the warmth of worn wooden tables and hand-painted walls. Charity cases, Mom sneered, noting the packed dining room. A last attempt to look successful. I led them to their reserved table, the same one where Grandpa had always sat. Coffee, I offered, already knowing they couldn't resist. Might as well, Dad sighed. One last cup before this place closes for good. I brought out Grandpa's copper pot, pouring their cups with the same flourish he taught me. The familiar aroma filled the air, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker in my mother's eyes. A memory, perhaps, of simpler times. Your grandfather, she said suddenly, used to make coffee like this every morning in our first restaurant, before we modernized things. Before you turned it into a steakhouse, you mean? I kept my voice neutral, just as Grandpa had instructed. Before you replaced his hand-rolled pasta with frozen entrees? That's business, Dad snapped. Something you never understood. Giuseppe was a good chef, but he was stuck in the past. We made his restaurant profitable, and lost its soul in the process. I murmured, but they were already turning to their phones, checking stock prices and reservation numbers for their chain of restaurants. At 9:45, Marco arrived. My parents barely glanced at our old supplier as he made his way through the dining room, greeting regulars with hugs and warm handshakes. They didn't notice in slipping me a small envelope. Everything's ready, he whispered, just like Giuseppe planned. I nodded, tucking the envelope into my chef's coat. One last piece of Grandpa's puzzle falling into place. The law office of Harrison and Wells occupied the entire top floor of a downtown building. By 10 a.m., we were all seated in the conference room, my parents, their lawyers, and me. Mr. Harrison, who'd been Grandpa's attorney for 30 years, sat at the head of the table, a thick folder before him. Before we begin, he said, Giuseppe left specific instructions about how this meeting should proceed. He pulled out an envelope. First, he asked that we watch this video. My parents shifted impatiently as Mr. Harrison started the recording. Grandpa's face appeared on the screen, recorded 3 months before his passing. He looked tired, but his eyes sparkled with his characteristic mischief. If you're watching this, he began, then everything has gone according to plan. Robert, Maria, he addressed my parents, you're probably feeling very pleased with yourselves right now. Your restaurant chain is successful, you think you've proven me wrong about traditional values, and you believe Sophia's restaurant is failing. My father sat up straighter, frowning. But you forgot the most important lesson I ever taught you. A restaurant isn't just about profit. It's about heart, about tradition, about the love you put into every dish. Grandpa smiled. Sophia never forgot. That's why she agreed to help me with my final recipe, a dish best served cold. What is he talking about? Mom demanded, but Mr. Harrison held up a hand. The health inspection report you're so proud of citing. Grandpa continued. Arranged by my old friend Inspector Romano. Those canceled reservations, all rebooked for next month. The bank loans you think are coming due. Paid off 6 months ago. My parents' faces paled as Grandpa continued, outlining every detail of our plan. How we created the illusion of failure while actually building a thriving business. How every negative review had been carefully planted, every setback orchestrated. But that's just the appetizer, Grandpa said, leaning closer to the camera. The main course is in my will. Mr. Harrison, if you please. The lawyer opened his folder. The last will and testament of Giuseppe Antonio Romano. To my daughter Maria and son-in-law Robert, I leave my collection of vintage wine, valued at approximately $50,000. That's it? Dad exploded. What about the restaurant properties? The real estate holdings? To my granddaughter Sophia, Mr. Harrison continued, I leave the following. First, full ownership of all property currently leased to Martinez Steakhouse Holdings, including the buildings housing their 15 restaurant locations. The room erupted. That's impossible, Mom shouted. Those properties belong to the corporation. No, Mr. Harrison said calmly, producing another document. They belong to Giuseppe personally. Your leases were with him, not the corporation. Leases that, as of this morning, are all terminated with cause. With cause? Dad's voice was barely a whisper. I pulled out the envelope Marco had given me. Documentation of health code violations at all 15 locations, real ones, not staged, along with evidence of supplier kickbacks, labor law violations, and tax irregularities. You investigated us? Mom's face was ashen. No, I corrected, Grandpa did. Over the past 5 years, while you were busy expanding and cutting corners, he watched you destroy everything he built and he documented every violation. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. There's more. Giuseppe also left Sophia his controlling interest in Martinez Restaurant Group, making her the majority shareholder. My father slumped in his chair. 15 years of empire building, undone in 15 minutes. You can't do this, he muttered. We'll fight it. You can try, I said, pulling out my own folder. But first you might want to look at these. Documentation of every change you made to Grandpa's original restaurant. Every substitution of fresh ingredients for frozen ones. Every traditional recipe replaced with mass-produced alternatives. All in violation of the terms of sale he included when you bought him out. Those terms were never enforceable, Mom argued. Actually, Mr. Harrison interjected, they were. Giuseppe was very thorough in his contracts. You agreed to maintain the quality and standards of the original restaurant. You failed to do so. The contract clearly states that in such a case, ownership reverts to him or his designated heir. I stood up, smoothing my chef's coat. You have a choice. You can fight this in court, where all these documents will become public record, or you can accept Grandpa's final offer. What offer? Dad asked warily. You can stay on as managers of 3 locations, if you agree to return to Grandpa's original standards. Fresh ingredients, traditional recipes, everything made from scratch. The other 12 locations will be renovated and rebranded under the Bella Cucina name. And if we refuse, then I close all 15 restaurants tomorrow. The properties are mine now, remember? They huddled with their lawyers for an hour, but in the end, they knew they had no choice. The documents were ironclad, the evidence overwhelming. That evening, I returned to my restaurant, my first restaurant, I should say now. The dinner service was in full swing, the dining room filled with the regulars who'd helped maintain our charade of failure. Marco met me at the door. Giuseppe would be proud, he said, hugging me tight. You did it exactly as he planned. We all did it, I corrected, looking around at the bustling restaurant, everyone who loved him, who believed in his way of doing things. I walked through the kitchen, running my hand along the same copper pots Grandpa had used for decades. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Renovating the other restaurants, retraining staff, rebuilding the reputation my parents had tarnished. But tonight was for celebrating. I picked up Grandpa's coffee pot, now mine, and began preparing his special blend. As the rich aroma filled the kitchen, I could almost hear his voice. Remember, Piccola, Success isn't measured in dollars or stars. It's measured in the smiles of your guests, in the love you put into every dish, in the traditions you keep alive. My parents arrived just before closing, looking oddly diminished without their designer clothes and corporate armor. They sat at Grandpa's table, their table now, I supposed as managers of one of the original locations. Coffee, I offered. They nodded, and for the first time in years, I saw tears in my mother's eyes as she breathed in the familiar scent. "He planned this for years, didn't he?" she asked softly, "teaching you, preparing you, while we were too busy expanding to notice." "He never stopped loving you," I said, pouring their cups. "He just couldn't bear to watch you destroy everything he'd built. This way, his legacy lives on, through all of us." Dad took a sip, closing his eyes. "I've forgotten how good real coffee tastes." "That's the thing about traditions," I said, thinking of Grandpa. "They're always there, waiting to be remembered." Over the next year, we transformed the restaurant group back into what Grandpa had always envisioned. My parents, stripped of their corporate ambitions, rediscovered their love of real cooking. The other locations, reborn as Bella Cucina branches, returned to traditional methods and fresh ingredients. And me? I kept Grandpa's copper coffee pot on the stove, brewing his special blend every morning, remembering that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply returning things to the way they should have been all along. 1 year later, I stood in the kitchen of our flagship restaurant, the one my parents had first transformed into a steakhouse, now restored to its original glory. The same worn wooden tables, the same hand-painted walls, the same commitment to quality that Grandpa had insisted upon. My mother was at the pasta station, teaching a young chef how to roll dough by hand, something she hadn't done in 15 years. My father was in the dining room, greeting guests by name, remembering their usual orders, being the restaurateur Grandpa had first taught him to be. And me? I was brewing coffee in a copper pot that held 3 generations of memories, adding new ones every day. Because in the end, Grandpa's master plan wasn't about revenge at all. It was about redemption, about bringing his family back to the things that really mattered. Sometimes the best dishes aren't served cold. Sometimes they're served exactly the way they were meant to be, with love, tradition, and just a hint of hard-learned wisdom. Just like Grandpa's perfect cup of coffee.
They said I stole it. A necklace. $9,000. I was still holding the orange juice. It was a Sunday morning, the kind with light wind and no expectations. My little sister Cassidy, 21 Golden Pre-Law, had turned the backyard into a brunch spread. White linen mimosas curated playlist. My mother, Elaine, said it was tasteful but aspirational. My father, Mark, stood by the grill, even though there was no meat, just for show like always. I was pouring drinks, not talking much. That was always my place in this family. Marin, older, helpful, quiet. I knew how to stay out of the way. I thought I did. Cassidy tapped her champagne flute with the back of her spoon, dainty, deliberate, and the music paused. "I just want to say something real quick," she said. "I assumed it would be about grad school, or a boyfriend, or some new fellowship. I wasn't really listening, not fully, because I was trying to fish an ice cube out of someone's mimosa. I didn't look up until I heard her say my name. It's awkward, but I found my necklace, the gold one Grandma left me. It was missing for weeks, and yesterday I found it in Marin's drawer." Silence, 1 second, then 3. A fork dropped onto china. My mother's breath caught just enough for me to hear it. And my father. He didn't even look at me. He just reached for a cloth napkin and started wiping a spot that wasn't there. I didn't take anything I said, but it sounded like I wasn't sure. The sound that came from my mother wasn't a gasp exactly. It was that breath people take when they think they've been proven right. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew you'd resent her eventually." That part hurt more than the accusation. Cassidy stood tall, arms folded, face unbothered, like she was doing everyone a favor. "I just think it's better we put it out there now, so we can move on." No one spoke. Not my father. Not even Aunt Trish, who never misses a chance to insert herself. The entire backyard buzzed, but none of it came from people. It came from electricity. That moment before lightning strikes. And when I looked down, the orange juice had spilled across the table. I hadn't even noticed my hand shaking. That night, I was asked to leave. No fight, no suitcase. Just a half-zipped duffel bag and a sentence from my father I still remember exactly. You should go, before this gets worse. I didn't cry the night they asked me to leave. I packed what I could into a canvas duffel and sat on the porch steps until my ride came. The air was quiet heavy with the kind of silence families use when they don't want to say anything true. I left without asking why, because deep down I already knew. At Layla's apartment, she didn't say much, just handed me the spare key and the good pillow. I slept for 12 hours without dreaming. When I woke up, I sat in her kitchen drinking coffee that wasn't mine, wearing a t-shirt that wasn't mine, and realizing something that had been true for a long time. They hadn't just erased me that night. I had been fading out for years. It started slowly. The electric bill, for example. One time, the lights were nearly cut off, and I offered to set up autopay from my account. It was supposed to be temporary. That was 6 years ago. I never turned it off. Then the groceries. Mom would text me every week with a list. Never a thank you. Just a list. Cassidy's tuition came next. A bursar issue, she said. Something about Dad missing a form. I paid the balance online, told them it was from a family scholarship. They never asked who, even the mortgage. When Dad got laid off, I started sending small payments directly to the loan account. I kept doing it even when he went back to work. No one asked why the statement stopped coming. They just assumed everything was being handled. I was the one who handled it. I kept a spreadsheet in my Google Drive called Active Accounts. I used colors: green for monthly bills, blue for annual support, red for anything late. Every few months, I'd adjust the formula so the totals didn't scare me. I told myself I was helping them stay afloat. I told myself family meant sacrifice. But over time, it started to feel like I was a silent subscription they forgot they signed up for. I remember the day I got my first full-time job. I called my mother excited. She said congratulations, then asked if I could help with Cassidy's books that semester. No pause, no question about how I was doing. Just another request. I said yes, of course. Back then, I always did. There were signs looking back, like that time Cassidy joked at dinner that I was just a background character in her story. Everyone laughed, including me. But the older I got, the more I realized she wasn't joking. That's how they saw me. Supportive, silent, optional. Even birthdays changed. One year they forgot mine entirely. When I brought it up, Mom said, "Oh, I thought we celebrated early." We hadn't. I let it go. That's what I did best. Let things go. But sitting in Layla's kitchen that morning, something hardened in me. Not out of anger, out of clarity. I didn't belong in that house anymore. Maybe I never did. I wasn't their daughter. Not really. I was their system, their safety net, their invisible plan B. And when they didn't need me anymore, or when I stopped playing along, they called it betrayal. So I didn't cry. I made coffee. I opened my laptop, and I started preparing to disappear properly. It started with a text from Cassidy. Just one line, no greeting. "Did you cancel the electricity?" I didn't answer. 3 minutes later, the power's out. The internet's down. I have midterms this week. This isn't funny. Still nothing from me. Then my mother called. I let it ring until it stopped. A minute later, she left a voicemail. I listened to it on speaker, sitting cross-legged on Layla's floor. Her voice was clipped but controlled. "Marin, I don't know what's going on with the bills, but we've been getting calls from the utility companies. The gas is late and Cassidy's tuition portal says she's locked out. I assume there's been some kind of mix-up. Call me back when you get this." She didn't say thank you. She didn't ask if I was okay. Just confusion dressed up as concern. By day 4, the texts started coming from my father. Short, hesitant things. "Hey, just checking in. Cassidy's portal is still frozen. Any chance you're still linked to that?" I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, I wasn't, but because I finally understood what silence could do. How loud it becomes when someone is used to you filling in the blanks. On day 6, I got a bank alert. Someone tried to log into one of the family accounts I had removed myself from. Invalid credentials. A reset request was sent, but they couldn't answer the security question. I had changed it. What color was Marin's first bike? The answer was blue. No one remembered that. On day 8, my mother tried again. This time more direct. "You made your point, but this is childish. You can't just pull away from your responsibilities and leave us hanging. We're still family." I almost laughed. responsibilities, not memories, not love, not home, just what I owed. She didn't know, they never knew, that I had been paying for the very air they breathed, the warmth in the walls, the silence in their comfort. And now that it was gone, they were gasping. By day 10, I could tell the panic was setting in. The kind people don't say out loud, but it leaks through their words. I started getting messages from Cassidy's friends, from distant relatives. Vague things like, "Hey, hope you're okay. Your mom mentioned there's been some confusion." Or, "Cassidy said you're going through something. Just wanted to check in." But no one asked what happened. They just wanted me to reset whatever I had turned off. So I stayed quiet. And it echoed louder than any fight we'd ever had. The house was starting to fold in on itself room by room. I imagined them lighting candles in the kitchen, wondering why the fridge hummed one minute and fell silent the next. I pictured Cassidy refreshing her tuition portal over and over, as if the system had glitched instead of the girl she built her lies on. No yelling, no drama. Just a slow, crumbling unravel like something left out in the rain too long. They didn't know I was the roof. They just noticed the leak. It came on a Tuesday afternoon when I was halfway through folding laundry and pretending I had moved on. A message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Jasmine Rivera, our old neighbor. She lived 2 houses down from my parents, raised 2 boys by herself, and ran a small freelance videography business on the side. When Cassidy and I were little, she used to babysit us after school. She taught me how to tie my shoelaces. She taught Cassidy how to lie without blinking. I almost didn't open it, but the preview stopped me cold. "Marin, I need to show you something. I heard what Cassidy did and I have proof she lied." I clicked. There was an audio file. No explanation. No commentary. Just a play button and a timestamp. I sat down, pressed it, and waited. At first, all I could hear was backyard chatter. Birds clinking glasses, some muffled laughter. Then a clear voice, high and unmistakably Cassidy's. Of course I planted it. I needed people to see her for what she is. Mom always says Marin acts so perfect. Let's see how perfect she looks when she's kicked out. The clip kept going. There was a second voice, one of her friends. Giggling. Then Cassidy again. She won't fight back. She never does. That's the point. My ears rang. Not because I was surprised, but because hearing it, really hearing it, felt like someone had taken my worst suspicion and dressed it in her voice. I closed my eyes, let the words echo once more. Then I read Jasmine's next message. I was filming slow-motion footage of the garden for a wedding job. My mic caught their conversation by accident. I didn't realize what she said until I played it back. I've already sent it to the dean's office at her college. Someone like her shouldn't get away with this. I stared at my screen for a long time. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure what to say. Thank you didn't feel right. Nothing felt right. She had framed me, lied without flinching, watched me get pushed out of our home and felt nothing but satisfaction. And now her own voice had turned on her. I copied the file, saved it to a backup drive, then shut my laptop. No revenge plan, no announcement. Just silence. 3 days later, Cassidy went quiet online. Her carefully curated life, the brunch photos, the blessed to be me, captions, the perfectly filtered morning routines all vanished overnight. The comments dried up. Her stories stopped. Her face disappeared. Whispers started instead. At first, just among students. Then in department group chats. Then I was told during class. She's the one from the audio. Did you hear what she did to her sister? Honestly, it's kind of sociopathic. The clip made it to a student forum. Someone had ripped the sound and added subtitles. The post said, "Your family's golden child isn't so golden." And still, I said nothing. She was called into a disciplinary hearing. Then another. Not just for the false accusation, but for a separate plagiarism case that had been swept under the rug last semester. Apparently, she had used an AI tool to write a term paper and lied about it. This time, no one covered for her. She was suspended. When Layla read me the update, I didn't flinch. I just nodded. They had always protected her, given her the benefit of the doubt even when there was no doubt to give. Now her voice, not mine, had ended the story. And I was still here, still quiet, still standing. After the silence came space. Not applause, not justice. Just space. Enough of it to move again. While Cassidy was explaining herself to student conduct committees, I was working. My manager, Mr. Elias, called me into his office one morning. He was a quiet man, sharp-suited, fond of understatements. I had been with the firm for 5 years, long enough to know when something was changing. He looked at me then at a folder on his desk. "You've been showing up like clockwork," he said, "even when your life's been unraveling. That takes grit." I didn't answer. I never told him anything. But I guess people notice more than we think. He slid the folder across to me. "There's a position opening up in our Denver office. Lateral promotion. More autonomy, better salary. Think of it as a reset button." I opened the folder. The title was real. The salary was real. The relocation stipend was generous. "You don't have to say yes right now," he added, "but I think you've earned the choice." I said yes before he finished the sentence. That night, I packed what little I owned into 3 boxes. 1 suitcase, a new pair of headphones, and a file labeled "Canceled Accounts," which I didn't bother opening. Layla cried a little when I left, not because she was sad, just because she understood what this meant. You never needed them to say sorry, she told me. You just needed somewhere they couldn't reach. Denver was colder than I expected, but the apartment 12th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows facing the mountains felt like the right kind of empty. I didn't decorate much. Just one framed print above the desk, a black and white photo of a woman walking alone across a frozen lake. No caption, just motion. I started filming videos in my kitchen. Nothing fancy, just a tripod, soft light, and my voice. The channel was called Silent Budget. My first upload was titled "They Called Me a Thief." I was the one paying their bills. I didn't name names. I didn't show faces. I just told the truth. About money. About boundaries, about what it costs to be the quiet one. The video reached 10,000 views in 3 days, then 50, then 100. Women started writing to me. My sister did this to me too. My parents used my credit and told me I owed them. Thank you. I thought I was the only one. I started filming weekly. Budgeting tips, exit plans, silent financial abuse, a term most people didn't even know existed. Sponsors reached out. A podcast invited me to speak. Someone from a local women's shelter asked if they could use my videos in their program. I said yes to all of it, not because I wanted to be seen, but because now when I spoke, no one looked away. It came from an old number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. Marin, the voice was slow, warm, familiar in a way I couldn't place until she said her name. "This is Hope. Your aunt, on your father's side." I hadn't heard her voice since I was a child. She used to send birthday cards with glitter stickers and $10 bills. Then one year she stopped. My mother said she'd moved away, that she didn't want to be part of the family anymore. Turns out that wasn't the truth. "I've been following your story," she said. "Someone sent me your video, and I think it's time you knew something." I sat down. Not because I felt unsteady, but because there are some truths you don't stand up for. "After your grandmother passed," she continued, "she left a small trust in her will. It was meant for you, just you." I didn't speak. I wasn't sure how. "I only found out recently," she added. "I ran into the estate lawyer. He assumed you'd already received it, but when I told him you hadn't, well," he showed me the file. According to the will, the trust was supposed to activate when I turned 21. It was intended to help me start something, a business, a degree, a foundation, anything I chose. The amount wasn't enormous, but it was more than I'd ever had access to. $82,000. Hope told me that after the funeral, my parents requested the lawyer delay contacting me, said I was too overwhelmed and not ready for the responsibility. Legally, they couldn't withdraw the funds, but they could control access to the information, and they did. For 8 years. I don't remember much of the conversation after that. Only that Hope gave me the lawyer's contact and told me gently, "It was never about you not deserving things, Marin. They just couldn't stand the idea of you having something they couldn't touch." I filed the paperwork the next morning. 3 weeks later, the funds were transferred into my account. No fanfare, no apology. Just a number on a screen and a quiet in my chest that didn't feel hollow this time. That night, I opened the folder where I used to keep receipts and unpaid bills and things I'd promised myself I'd forget. I deleted it. Then I opened a blank document, titled it What Comes Next. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to earn what was already mine. 2 weeks after the trust cleared, I got a text from my mother. Just 5 words. Can we please talk, Marin? No punctuation. No apology. Just a request. As if none of it had happened. I didn't reply. The next day, Cassidy tried. Her number was blocked, so she sent an email. The subject line said, "Hey." The body was 1 paragraph. She said she'd made mistakes, that people were hard on her after the suspension, that she was working on herself. She ended it with, "I hope you're doing well." I didn't answer that either. I wasn't angry. I just didn't owe her that much anymore. Then came the call from a cousin I barely remembered. One of those family satellites who only orbit when there's gossip to confirm. "I heard you're like famous now," she said. "Mom said you've got hundreds of thousands of followers, that you're helping people." I said I was doing all right. She paused, then asked something that caught me off guard. "Do you think your parents watch your videos?" I hadn't thought about it. But later that night I wondered. Not because I wanted them to see me, but because they'd spent so long pretending I wasn't real, and now I lived in places they couldn't avoid, shared on timelines, echoed in comments, named in podcast intros, quoted in forums full of strangers who said, "I know this voice. I know this story. I lived it too." Sometimes the algorithm does what memory won't. It brings you back. I imagined my mother sitting at the kitchen table watching my face on a cracked iPad screen she once asked me to pay for. I imagined Cassidy scrolling in bed, pausing when a video autoplayed. I imagined my father hearing my name in a conversation he wasn't part of. Not fame, not revenge, just proof that I had always been here, that I didn't disappear, that they just stopped looking. I live alone now. 12th floor. Quiet building. The kind with slow elevators and neighbors who nod politely but never ask questions. In the mornings, I drink coffee by the window and answer emails from people I'll never meet. They tell me things they've never told anyone about the parents who erased them, the siblings who stole their names, the families who only called when the bills were due. And I listen. I respond. I remind them what no one reminded me. Your absence is not the crime. Their comfort with your silence is. At night I film. I don't use a script, I just talk. Some videos are short, others take shape slowly like breath-finding rhythm. I talk about budgeting, about learning to say no, about walking away without a parade, about surviving without becoming bitter. Silent Budget now has over 600,000 subscribers. It's strange how many people needed permission to stop saving people who never saw them. Stranger still, how many of those people are older than me? Mothers, retired nurses, grandfathers who raised other people's children. They tell me, "You're saying what I didn't have words for," and I believe them, because I know what it feels like to go decades without being called by your name in a room full of people who share your blood. I haven't spoken to my parents in almost a year. Cassidy tried once more. A voice message this time. She sounded tired, small. She said, "You were right, you know, about everything." Then she paused. "I don't think anyone else ever will be." I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. Some things deserve to be heard exactly once. My Aunt Hope sends postcards now. She signs them in cursive always with one line that feels like a benediction. "You're exactly who she hoped you'd be." She means my grandmother, the one who left me something even when no one else did. Some evenings I walk along the river downtown. I wear headphones not for music, but to muffle the world. I watch couples argue, dogs pull leashes, children chase each other through grass. No one knows me here. Not really, and that's the point. I'm not the quiet sister anymore, not the fixer, not the background. I'm just Marin. I was never lost. They just didn't look. And now they can't stop watching. I folded the envelope slowly that morning. No ribbon, no card. Just clean, sealed white paper, 3 months of rent tucked inside, paid in full. I'd called her landlord the week before and asked for the total. $2, $147. I had the receipt printed and paper-clipped to the bills. No message. I figured she'd understand. I hadn't been home in 2 Christmases. Last year, I told them I was traveling. The year before that, I just didn't reply. But this year, I thought maybe things had softened. Maybe Eliza losing her job, moving into that duplex with the peeling windows, and watching her marriage fall apart would have changed something. Maybe she'd let the performance go for once. The living room still looked the same. Same garland along the fireplace, same white tree with blue ornaments, same scratchy red stockings with glitter glue names from when we were kids. Mine was still hanging Marin in crooked gold glitter, but someone had pushed it behind the plant stand. The gift exchange was halfway through when I stepped forward. I waited until Eliza had finished unwrapping her third surprise of the night, a personalized cheese board from Mom, and then I handed her the envelope. Quiet, no fanfare. "This should cover January through March," I said. She raised an eyebrow, peeled the seal open like she was unwrapping junk mail. Her fingers brushed the money, the receipt. She looked at it, blinked once, and then smiled sharp and showy, the kind of smile she used to pull before a high school debate. "Oh, wow," she said loudly, waving the envelope for everyone to see. "Someone's trying to buy her way back into the family." Laughter broke out like a champagne cork. Not just a chuckle, real full-throated laughter. Uncle Joel clapped. Dad leaned back with his beer. Mom gave that tight little laugh she always did when Eliza landed a jab. And no one, not one person, asked what was inside. I stood there holding my coffee mug, fingers warm on the outside, freezing on the inside. No one said thank you. No one asked what it meant. No one cared what it took to show up with that envelope in the first place. So I reached forward, slipped it back from Eliza's hand without a word, and slid it into my coat pocket. "Good to know," I said. The room went quiet. Eliza blinked. Mom's smile faltered. The heat dropped like someone had opened a window. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't slam a door. Just stepped outside and let the cold night air slap the sting off my face. And the strange part is not a single one of them followed. When people say families drift apart, they usually mean distance or time or politics. But mine didn't drift. Mine selected. One person at a time. It started slow, the way rot does under the paint behind the walls. I was 15 when I noticed Mom stopped mentioning my name when she talked about the girls. She'd say Eliza's taking honors classes, or Eliza got asked to winter formal, but never Marin got into the math competition, or Marin helped repaint the porch. I was there. I was always there. But I was the quiet one, the practical one, the one who packed her own lunch and fixed the Wi-Fi and didn't complain when Eliza's drama took over the dinner table. When Eliza didn't get into Duke, Mom cried for a week. When I got into UT Austin on a scholarship, she said, "That's good. Close to home." I moved into the dorms anyway. By the time I graduated, Eliza was married. Big wedding. Backyard tent, string lights, catered barbecue. I wasn't in the bridal party. I was the girl folding napkins with Aunt Jen and being told not to bring a +1 because space is tight. She divorced 2 years later. No one talked about it much except to say he didn't deserve her. They never said what she did to deserve better. I knew things. I'd heard the late-night calls, the slurred voicemails. But I stayed quiet. That's what I was good at. Not making things worse. Then came the call about Mom's surgery. Nothing serious, outpatient. But I drove up anyway. 3 hours left work early. When I walked into the waiting room, Eliza was already there holding court with 2 of Mom's friends sipping a latte. She looked me up and down, then turned back to her conversation. Didn't even say hi. That was the same visit where Dad accidentally let it slip that Eliza had moved into the spare unit on the family property. "She's getting back on her feet," he said, like she was some brave pioneer. I'd offered to help pay Mom's post-op expenses. He said, "That's not necessary. Eliza's already taken care of it. I still sent a check. That was 2 years ago. Since then, I've been more of a footnote than a daughter." I wasn't invited to Dad's retirement dinner. I wasn't included on the group thread about selling Grandma's piano. One day, I logged into Facebook and saw that Mom had updated her profile photo to one of her and Eliza on a beach trip I'd never heard about. I commented, "Looks like fun." The comment was deleted within the hour. That's when I stopped asking to be included. But I didn't stop helping. I still Venmo'd Mom every month for her prescriptions. I still mailed gift cards from Santa for Eliza's kids. I still showed up when Dad slipped on the stairs and needed help fixing the railing. Always as an extra set of hands, never as a name on the guest list. And still, for some reason I can't fully explain, I showed up this Christmas. I told myself it was tradition. I told myself it was time. But I think deep down I just wanted to see if anything had changed. Turns out it had. Just not in the way I hoped. Austin wasn't part of the plan. It was where the job offer happened to be, and at the time I didn't have anything keeping me anywhere else. I took the train down with 2 suitcases and a second-hand laptop. My first apartment was a 3rd-floor walk-up over a vape shop with cracked blinds and a stove that hissed when you lit it. I didn't complain. It was quiet. No one barged in. No one asked why I'd gone. The job was with a legal compliance firm that specialized in infrastructure audits. I learned to speak fluent bureaucrat, became fluent in the language of loopholes and signatures. I got promoted quietly. No party, just a new title in my email footer. That suited me fine. They never asked about it, my family, I mean. Mom would send vague one-line texts like, "Hope you're staying warm," or "Saw on the news Austin had a storm." Never anything more. But when her pharmacy bill went up, she sent me the PDF without a word. Just forwarded it. And I paid. Then came the dentist copay. Then the new tires for Dad's truck. Then the Eliza's phone broke and she's job hunting message. I sent money. I always did. I told myself it was easier than arguing. And it was. Once I accidentally paused a transfer by mistyping my PIN. Mom called within an hour. "Just wanted to make sure everything's okay," she said casually, too casually. The thing didn't go through this month. It was the only time she'd called me directly in over a year. I told myself I didn't mind. I had my own rhythm now, wake up early, work. Grocery shop, read, sleep. No drama, no tension. I had coworkers, a neighbor who said good morning, a mailbox with my name on it. I didn't need more. Then Derek arrived. We met at work, paired on a project nobody wanted, assessing risk compliance on state-owned bridges. He was all sleeves rolled up, speaks in stats, swears at Excel energy. On the second day, he brought me a coffee without asking how I take it, just said, "Figured it couldn't hurt." It didn't. He was the kind of person who remembered which snacks you liked and didn't make a show of it. The kind who asked about your day, then actually listened. He had a rescue dog named June and parents who lived 20 minutes away. When he invited me to their Sunday dinner, I said yes before I could think of a reason not to. They weren't extraordinary people, but they were kind in ways I'd forgotten people could be. His mom made banana pudding from scratch. His dad told slow jokes and always offered seconds. No one asked what my job was or if I was seeing anyone. They asked if I liked green beans and if I wanted the end slice of meatloaf. I did. At first, I didn't tell Derek much. I kept my family vague, just "it's complicated" or "we're not close." He didn't push. Once after dinner, his mom asked if I had any siblings. I said yes. She said, "Older or younger?" I said, "Not sure anymore." The truth was, I didn't know what to call Eliza. We shared blood, a history, a house once. But lately, it felt like I'd been erased from every version of our story. And the strange part, they didn't even seem to notice I was gone. Still, I kept sending money. Not because they asked, but because they never said thank you. And somehow, that silence felt like permission to keep going. A way to still exist, if only on paper. But that night, after the gift exchange, after the laughter, I opened my banking app and saw it clearly. $12,880. That's what I'd sent to my family over the past 18 months. No phone calls, no birthdays remembered, no photos. Just deposits. And in return, they laughed. So I opened Venmo, typed in Eliza's name, entered $1, caption to match the "thank you forgot," and I hit send. The email wasn't meant for me. That much was obvious. It was a forward, probably by mistake. The subject line read, "Family Property Planning, Next Steps," and somewhere in the thread, tucked between pleasantries and spreadsheet attachments, was a sentence that landed like a stone in my chest. "Meeting to finalize usage of the second unit. Assuming Eliza continues sole occupancy." My name wasn't mentioned, not once. Not as a beneficiary, not as a sibling, not even as someone to be looped in. But I knew that unit. The back house behind my parents' place, the one Grandpa paid off in full and left to the girls in equal share. That was his phrase. I remembered it. You and Eliza split that little house. For when the world gets loud. I remembered the key he gave me when I turned 19. I still had it on a ring I never used, and now they were planning to assign it quietly permanently to my sister. Like I never held the other half of the deed. Like I was never even in the picture. I didn't reply to the email. I didn't correct them. I called a lawyer instead. I didn't want to sue. I just wanted the paper trail. The will, the records, the change of ownership documents I never signed. I wasn't angry, at least not in the way people think of anger. I was precise, calm. It took a week to gather what I needed. Grandpa's original file, the county records, and a scanned document dated 6 months after his death stating I had voluntarily relinquished claim to the property. The signature wasn't mine, not even close. I printed everything, stapled it neat. Then I drove north. The family meeting was scheduled for Sunday afternoon at a mid-tier steakhouse they all liked, casual but private. I parked across the lot, watched from my car as Dad helped Mom out. Eliza trailed behind in a blazer she probably borrowed. Everyone looked comfortable, like they'd already decided. I waited until they were seated, then I walked in. The host blinked at me. "Party of—" "I'm with the Taylor group," I said. "They're expecting me." They weren't. When I stepped up to the table, the air shifted. Mom looked surprised, but not in a warm way. Dad said Marin like he wasn't sure if I was real. Eliza stared like I was holding a lit match near her curtain. "Hey," I said, just here to listen. No one offered me a seat, so I pulled one out myself. Eliza cleared her throat. "This is kind of a sensitive discussion." "I know," I said. I laid the folder on the table. "That's why I brought facts." Dad opened it. His eyebrows drew in. Mom said my name again, softer this time. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I just said I didn't sign that form. The one that says I gave up my half. Silence. Eliza reached for the folder. I placed my hand over it. "You can read it after lunch," I said. "I just wanted you to see I still exist. On paper. And in memory." No one argued. I stood up. "I won't stay," I added. "Don't worry. This isn't a scene. It's just a reminder." I nodded once and left the restaurant, my footsteps quiet on the tile. They didn't follow, but this time I knew they wouldn't. I thought that would be it. That after I placed the folder on the table and walked out of that steakhouse, they'd go quiet, circle the wagons, rewrite the moment like they always did. Instead, 2 days later, I got an email from Eliza. "Can we talk not to fight, just to understand?" There was a number at the bottom, her new cell. She'd changed it after the divorce. I stared at it for a long time. Then I called. She picked up on the first ring. "No hello, just, why didn't you say something sooner?" I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure how to. The silence stretched. I didn't even know there was a form she added. "Mom handled it." "Of course she did. Eliza." I said finally, "Do you remember what Grandpa told us about the house?" She hesitated. He said, "We'd always have somewhere to land, that it belonged to both of us." I waited. He didn't want us to fight over it, and yet I said somebody decided to pre-write the ending. She didn't argue. That surprised me. "We're meeting again on Sunday," she said. "Same place. Can you come?" I could have said no, but I didn't. This time when I arrived, they had a seat open. No warm welcome, just a space. That was enough. Mom looked tired. Dad had a folder in front of him, mine returned the pages still in order. No one said anything for a long time. Then Mom cleared her throat. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she began. "Eliza had just lost the baby. She was in pieces. You were far away. We didn't know if you'd even come back." I didn't interrupt. I let her talk. I signed the form. "I know I shouldn't have, but I figured it didn't matter, that you weren't interested in any of it anymore." "You figured wrong," I said quietly. She nodded. "I see that now." Eliza looked between us. "What do we do?" Dad spoke for the first time. "We can amend the trust," he said, "have it legally corrected, acknowledge the co-ownership. No one's contesting anything. He looked straight at me. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have checked. I didn't expect him to say that. Not because he wasn't capable, but because it had never occurred to him he needed to. I'm not here to reclaim property, I said. You can keep the structure. I just want the name restored. Officially. And permanently. Another pause. Then Eliza asked, "Why now?" And there it was. The real question. I'm not asking to be part of the family, I said. I just want to make sure that when people look back, they don't see a version of this story where I never existed. Silence. Mom reached for her purse, pulled out something small. An envelope. I found this when we were cleaning the guest room, she said. I think it was yours. She handed it to me. It was a letter. My handwriting, postmarked 4 years ago. A birthday card for Eliza's daughter. It had never been opened. I didn't even know this came, Eliza whispered. Mom. I put it aside, she admitted. It was a rough year. And then, I forgot. The word hung there like smoke. I folded the card, slid it into my coat. I won't drag this out, I said, standing. I didn't come here to settle scores. Eliza stood too. Are you leaving again? I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't smug this time, just tired. I never stopped leaving, I said. I just finally noticed. And then I walked out. Not fast, not dramatic, just done. The ride back to Austin was quiet. Derek didn't ask questions. He never did unless I looked like I wanted to talk. That's something I learned to love about him, his ability to be present without invading. We stopped once at a roadside diner with cracked linoleum and bad coffee. I didn't say much, just ate my sandwich and stared out the window watching 2 crows pick at a napkin near the parking lot. When we got home, I dropped my bag by the door and stood there for a long minute. I'll start a load of laundry, Derek offered gently. I nodded but didn't move. I don't know what I expected. Not peace. Not clarity, but maybe something louder. A final word, a release. What I got instead was the quiet settling of something long overdue. That night, I went through an old box I kept under my bed. Inside were things I hadn't touched in years, cards I'd written, and never sent copies of bank transfers I'd made for Mom's meds printouts of emails no one ever replied to. I took out the unopened birthday card, the one Eliza never saw, and placed it with the rest. Not as a wound, just a record. A thread I wouldn't follow anymore. I didn't call them after that. No follow-ups, no holiday messages. And they didn't call me either. I think on some level we all understood that chapter had closed. Not with drama, not with forgiveness, just finality. 2 months later, Derek's mom invited us to her birthday. I offered to bring a side dish. She asked if I knew how to make cornbread. I said, "Not really." She smiled. "Well, you're about to." That day in her kitchen, elbows dusted with flour, I felt something I hadn't in years, belonging without bargaining, just existing exactly as I was. No titles, no proof required. Later that week, Derek hung a small frame near our front door. Inside, it was a photo me on the porch holding a mug, eyes squinting into the sun. I didn't know he'd taken it. I asked why he chose that one. "Because you look like you're home," he said. It made me pause. I hadn't used that word home in a long time. Not out loud, not even in my own head. But maybe that was the truth of it. Not that I'd been cut out, but that I'd finally stepped out. And stayed out. And I didn't miss the wait. Sometimes at night I still think about that envelope. Not the money. The moment. The way the room laughed. The way no one asked what it cost me to show up. But now I don't feel it in my chest anymore. I feel it further back. Like a bruise that's faded into something you have to press to find. Last week a letter arrived from my mother. Real paper. Envelope. My name written in her careful old-fashioned script. I didn't open it. I didn't tear it up either. I just placed it in the box with the rest. The life I tried to keep warm even when no one reached back. And then I shut the lid. Some people leave by slamming doors. Others leave by no longer knocking. I was the latter. And I think that's why they remember me now. Not because I shouted, but because they can't fill the silence I left.